change.
Greatest engineering undertakings in the history
of freedom came under attack.
To be self-evident.
My name is Jason Bruner, and I'm an assistant professor in the School of Historical, Philosophical, and Religious Studies at Arizona State University. I want to take a couple minutes and talk about some different kinds of survivor testimonies that you may encounter in this section of the Comparative Genocides Project on the Rwandan genocide of 1994. Survivors' testimonies are an important and valuable source for learning about events like the Rwandan genocide, because these testimonies give you the experiences and memories of both elites and non-elites. What do I mean by that? Well, in the wake of something like the Rwandan genocide, there are people who are able to publish accounts of what happened. These are usually elites and published by powerful people. People like politicians, military officials, journalists, pastors, and priests. These are people who have connections to international publishing or speaking networks. Two examples among many here would be Bishop John Rusihana's book, The Bishop of Rwanda, or Paul Rusesabagina, who was made famous because of the movie Hotel Rwanda. But what about people who might be unable to write, or people who simply don't have access to international networks? These are the people, the so-called non-elites, whose experiences and memories of living during and after the genocide are preserved in many of the testimonies you'll see here. Still, it is important to think about who recorded their stories, who conducted the interviews, and who edited their testimonies that give us access to their lives. So let's take a quick look at some of the contexts in which survivors' testimonies have been recorded. One of the most prominent groups which has been invested in recording information about the Rwandan genocide is the United Nations. Many of the testimonies found on the UN's website are short, straightforward, and very poignant. It's worth keeping in mind that many of the UN's materials on the Rwandan genocide emphasize Rwandan unity and oneness as a theme. Another source of survivor testimonies is nonprofits and NGOs, or non-governmental organizations. Many of these, especially faith-based organizations like World Vision, have recorded testimonies that emphasize forgiveness and reconciliation or conversion between survivors and perpetrators. Other organizations, like the Aegis Trust, have partnered with Rwandan museums to establish archives and research centers for genocide scholars that have included extensive video and audio testimonies. And finally, we have testimonies from the thousands of court cases that were brought before the International Criminal Court, the Rwandan National Court System, and the Gacaca courts. As you carefully study survivors' testimonies, think about how the various people and groups have gathered these testimonies from a variety of contexts. How might the biases of the people asking the questions affect what survivors might choose to say or withhold? Now, this might seem like a complex question, but imagine if you had to recall something that happened to you. Would you say the same thing if you were talking to a journalist as you might say to your priest? Would you write the same thing in your diary that you might publish on a blog? Would you recall the exact details in the same way to your parents that you might tell to a court judge? In thinking through these questions, simply consider how telling about something in different contexts and situations can affect what you choose to say. But as you discuss these questions, remember that you are the one who has been invited into some of the most difficult, intimate, and painful moments of these individuals' lives. And I hope you will accept their invitation to learn about the genocide from their perspective, the perspective of the survivors.